Hey, what's going on, guys? It's and I have another short tutorial for you guys. This one is going to be on how to make the bassline patch of Dichotomy. That's the newest song that I am putting out, and it's going to sound a little bit something like this. Okay. I know I did some little atonal biddies there. Little noodling. First thing about this bass patch, it's sort of a modified Z bass patch. If anybody knows who Z is or what the Z bass patch is, well, you know what this bass patch more or less is. It's sort of like a saw wave, or rather two saw waves, that are put through sort of a formant sounding filter and then beefed up with distortion. It's pretty simple, but sounds pretty badass live. So yeah, it's a pretty cool bass patch. Yeah, let's get started. I use Massive, so it's time for our first Massive tutorial ever. I know everyone's so excited because I've been getting requests to do these for a while. So to start off with, you can see I have named it the Z bass patch. To start off with, you're going to start with a really basic saw wave 1 and saw wave 1. You're going to have two of them. Oscillator 1, oscillator 2, both saw waves. One pet peeve I have on a lot of online tutorials is when they tell you need to detune something. You don't need to, as long as you play the MIDI notes 2 octaves down. So, for instance, if you're going to play this right here, in this section of the keyboard, then detuning it down 2 octaves might help you. But if you don't mind going down here, you might as well just detune it 1 octave, or even if you're, I don't know, I'm kind of blathering right now. But point is, detuning it or adjusting the pitch of the oscillator really doesn't matter that much unless it's relative to another oscillator within the soft synth. So as long as these two oscillators are the same octave, then you're all good. So we got it at -2 octaves, -2 octaves. It could be -1, it could be -0, it could be +1. Doesn't matter as long as they're both the same. You're good. They're going to be both going through the first filter, so make sure that this little lever right here is put to F1, which puts it through filter 1. You're going to want to make sure that filter 1 is on, so you're going to put this little lever right here up to the top. Put the mix up to mix 1 to ensure that it does go through filter 1. And then this section right here really doesn't matter since we're only using the first filter, but you could put it down to parallel if you really want. Next, we're going to go down to our insert section. We got a couple of effects we're running. The parabolic shaper is a type of distortion similar to clipping. It kind of turns your saw into a square wave. We're going to turn the dry wet up to about 2 o'clock, and the drive is just past 9. Then we're going to go to insert 2, which is the hard clipper, and we're going to go to 9 o'clock with the dry wet, and then just a little past 2 on the drive. Okay, and that sort of adds even more of a square wave effect to your saw without completely going square. And then finally, in the FX1 slot, you're going to go to Classic Tube. You're going to do about a 1030 with the dry wet, and then about a 1230 with the drive. You're going to make a dimension expander on FX2. Just barely going with the dry wet, very light dry wet. You can see up here it's 0.04, so 4/100ths of a turn on the dry wet, and then just barely on the size. Not even, I don't think I even have anything. Yeah, it's on 0, so no size. That's just to add a little bit of width. Alright, so a little quick thing you need to make sure of under the hood. You're going to want to set unison to 2, the max to 2. So it's going to make sure that there's 2 voicings played per oscillator every time, which is essential. You don't want random numbers of voices. You're going to want to hit monophon. Unless you want to do chords with it, you can do polyphon, but that might be a little bit too much. So monophon if you really want a driving bass line. Trigger, I like doing always, but you can do legato if you don't mind putting stacking MIDI notes on top of each other to get that portamento sound. Now I realize I'm going fast right here. I apologize. I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment. Another essential part of the sound is doing the restart via gate. That essentially controls the phase of the oscillator, and it's a more or less a retrigger. And then you can adjust the phase where the phase begins right in here. For this one, we both start at 0 on both of these saw waves. And then lastly, you can adjust the time here, and that's more or less the time it takes for a portamento to occur. So let me demonstrate. You can hear, especially right there, where there's a large leap in pitch, there is quite a really, sorry for my English, there's a really noticeable bend up into that note, and that's what the portamento is. That's what the monophon does with the always trigger. And what this time does is it allows you to either make more dramatic that slide, a little bit longer, a little bit more drawn out, or you can shorten it to where it's barely noticeable, which it's basically in this song it's barely noticeable. And then I also did a little bit of a low shelf boost. Okay. You can also see the double notch filter up here, which is very essential to the sound that we're making. The cutoff's a little past 12. Let me demonstrate what that sounds like. So just sort of adjust your cutoff to that sound to make a similar sound to that. And then the resonance you can also again adjust to make it sound just right. And voila, you have your basic Z bass right there. But we're not done yet, are we? We do have a chain to add to that to really beef it up. So we already ran it through about 3 different distortions, but that's not enough. We need another one. So I added Bit Crusher with some moderate on the 3rd type of distortion, some moderate 13.5 dB of drive, no downsampling, so staying with the same sample rate. And that's really going to beef it up, as you'll see. You can hear that's really boosted. It's really quite limited, and there's also quite a bit of harmonic content added as well. Next is the Fruity filter. That's not really a effect on the bass itself. It's more of a mixing tool and sort of an effect to introduce different parts of the song. I have this adjustable for wet and dry. So when I want the filter to turn on, I basically set this to all wet. I automated it. And then when I want it to go back to all dry, which is this regular, the regular bass line, I basically turn it to 100% dry, which would be about 0 it would be exactly 0 if you're doing an automation clip. All right, and that's a low pass filter. Oh no, a band pass filter. Yeah. So that's that. So far we have the bit crusher and the filter. Next we're going to go into the EQ. I think at the beginning I mentioned that this bass isn't exactly what Zed uses, and it's kind of impossible to get exactly what Zed uses, and nor should you be trying to copy exactly what Zed uses. But this is the reason for that. Each song is going to have different instrumentation to it. It's going to have different synths featured, different things going on outside of you know, the regular bass line that we have here. Again, I think I'm blathering again. I guess to keep it short, when I was mixing this song, there was a lot of high end, so I did a lot of low cutting, and there was even a little bit too much bass, so I did a little bit of a bass cut, and then there was some annoying frequencies in here, so I got rid of them. And then to really make it stand out and to really add that formant sound, I did a big little notch boost here at about 18,000 or 1800 hertz. Okay, so let's hear what that sounds like. So it's a lot brighter originally, and you can hear that there's a big difference. And this is one of those cases where the bass sounds pretty weak and wimpy by itself when it's EQ'd and all the subtractive EQs being used on it. But then when it comes in with the rest of the song, it sounds really nice, clean, and like it fits in the song. It doesn't sound really obtrusive, and it, you know, that's more or less how you should mix. So that's what I did there. And then after I did that, I realized that maybe I took a little bit too much off. I mean, it was still mixed how it should be, but I realized I still needed to add a little bit more oomph. So, lastly, I ran it through one more, well, it's basically a distortion plugin, but it's a tube simulator. It's another one of our famous exciter spotlights right here. We're featuring the exciter one more time. And it is Ozone 5. Yeah, we've already seen this already. So let's see what this sounds like with and without. As you can hear, there's barely any difference at all. And it's very, very subtle, but there's a little bit of stuff going on down low. And it sort of opens everything up a little bit, which I know Ozone's really good at doing. The exciter I find I'm using on a lot of leads, anything that I need to really bring out and sort of bring to life. I find the exciter does a really good job of doing that. Then I use the Fruity limiter, and all that is doing is keeping the levels constant. Not too obvious of limiting, but constant nonetheless. And then also side chaining. There's some side chain compression going on. And that's to allow our kick drum to really come through. And then finally, after all is said and done, I have Fruity Center. Just because I ran everything, I ran the signal through a lot of different plugins, and you never know when you're going to get some DC offset. You really shouldn't, because these are all fairly well coded plugins. However, I I mean, it doesn't really eat up too many resources, so why not put it on there to prevent that DC offset in the song. But yeah, that's more or less how I created the patch. Obviously, there was a lot of time that went into it. I didn't just create it in 20 minutes, but yeah, just keep experimenting with your own stuff. You'd be surprised what you can come up with when you really start to put some time in and put some effort in. But yeah, I'm gonna probably do some more massive tutorials here coming up. If you have any requests, go ahead and request them. I won't promise anything, but I'll try to get to them. I'll try to cover everything that a lot of other tutorials don't cover. Most people don't get into the amp envelope. They don't get into the oscillator section, as I was mentioning before, the key tracker oscillator section, key tracker filters. None of those controls seem to be manipulated all too much, and yet they can be pretty useful, pretty interesting if you learn how to use them correctly. So yeah, that's that. And if you want to go check out my song, my new song, it's only out on SoundCloud right now, as I may have mentioned before. But I'll keep you updated as far as the status of that song. If you could like and follow on SoundCloud, like the song, follow me, I would really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave a comment or send me a message. And my links are in the description as always. And that's it. So thanks, and you guys have a good night.